God is in this place. Hey, I do think God is doing something right now in our hearts. And I think in this moment, I actually want to just go into the sermon, if that's okay. We can mingle afterwards and do our minute to mingle, but I just feel just something here just to jump into it, if that's okay. And so maybe grab a seat. That would be great. I think sometimes we miss the moment, hey? Funny enough, that's what my sermon's about this morning. Because so often in our lives, you know, like we're going into a new series now, we're talking about Jesus and sharing hope. But sometimes when we even think about that, kind of, I don't know, it does something to us. But what I've realized more and more, and I think in my own life, is that the more that I've had these moments like we've just had now, I do find it a lot easier to hear from God in my calling and in my purpose. You know, if you don't know me, you may not know me, because I'm not always around this side. I'm the campus pastor for Life Church Philippi, which is out that direction, over the mountain. And I've gone through quite a few interesting things since working there. I've had my windows smashed in with guys trying to get in the car. I've been held up with guns to my head. I've had death threats. I've been hijacked. And everyone always says to me, like, how do you carry on doing what you're doing? Like, why would you want to carry on doing what you're doing, going through all this trauma in your life? And people think that I'm brave, but as my friend Beats, who's online, hey Beats, as she says to me, there's a very thin line between stupidity and bravery. And I think in my own life, like when I went there, when I felt the call to go there, I didn't hear this loud voice, nothing like that. I just felt like a burning in my heart. And so I started going there and spending time there, and we started building church there. And there's always been this moment or this thing, and maybe in the beginning it was bravery, I don't know. But after all those things happened to you, I can bet you it's not bravery anymore. But what it is, and I think this is the secret that I've learned at the moment that I'm trying to still implement, so I'm on a journey on this, is that to go out, we first have to go in. And that's the sermon this morning, going in. And you may just think to yourself, what's going in? I think what we just had now, that little 5 minutes, that was a going in. That was a moment of reflection, of looking at my life. Where am I at? God is here. How do I relate? And I think many of us, we struggle to go out. Although there's these amazing scriptures, you know, once Jesus had died and he was risen again, he speaks to his disciples and he's like, Matthew 28, he's like, go into all the world and preach the gospel. Then Acts 1 verse 8, he's telling them, go to the upper room, you'll receive the Holy Spirit and he'll come on you and you'll be witnesses. It's like this going out thing. And Mark, he does the same thing. You go out and preach the word. And so there's all these things of going out that Jesus spoke to his disciples, which ultimately he's speaking to us because we're part of that legacy. He's spoken these things to go out, but yet we struggle. Yet we struggle to step into certain things. And it could be all sorts of reasons. I wonder what holds us back from being those witnesses, for discipling people, for preaching to the nations. What holds us back? Is it disappointments that we've had in the past? Is it difficulties? What are those things? Is it our busyness and our distractions of social media and everything else that goes with that? What holds us back? Has anybody ever felt that? You're like, I want to do something good, but I just kind of never get there. Anybody ever felt that? And so this morning I want to take us on a little bit of a journey through a man's life in the Bible called Moses. And this is in Exodus 2, verses 1 to 10. This is the beginning of his story. It says, "Now a man of the tribe of Levi married a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. But when she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and coated it with tar and pitch. Then she placed the child in it and put it amongst the reeds along the bank of the Nile. His sister stood at a distance to see what had happened to him. Then Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw the basket among the reeds, and she sent a female slave to get it. She opened it and saw a baby. He was crying, and she felt sorry for him. 'This is one of the Hebrew babies,' she said. Then his sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, 'Shall I go and get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you?' 'Yes, go,' she said. So the girl went and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, 'Take this baby, nurse him for me, and I will pay you.' So the woman took the baby and nursed him. And when the child grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, 'I drew him out of water.'" So a little bit of background here. The Israelites are a growing nation in Egypt, and the Pharaoh says, "You know what? Kill every child, male child that comes out." And this was the result of this. And so here's Moses. He is a Hebrew, but he's growing up as a foreigner in a foreign land. He's growing up in a home where his parents are not his parents. He's growing up with siblings around him, but yet he's not one of the siblings. And I wonder how Moses felt in all of that. We go on to Exodus 2, verse 11 to 15. This is a little bit later on in life, and it says, "One day after Moses had grown up, he went out to where his own people were and watched them at their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. Looking this way and that and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. The next day he went out and saw 2 Hebrews fighting. He asked the one in the wrong, 'Why are you hitting your fellow Hebrew?' And the man said, 'Who made you ruler and judge over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian?' Then Moses was afraid and thought, 'What I did must have become known.' And when Pharaoh heard of this, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in Midian, where he sat down by a well." And so one day Moses is there, he's in this foreign land, foreign household. He's obviously grown up there, so he's getting to know everything, and he sees an injustice in the community. And he steps out. In his passion, in his burning of his heart, he sees this happening and he's just like, "I'm jumping in, I'm going for it." I don't think he ever intended to kill anyone. I don't know. But he ends up killing someone. And so once a prince living in royalty, he's now listened to his heart. He's done something. He's murdered somebody, and now he flees. And I wonder if many of us have experiences, maybe not as radical as that, but when it comes to reaching out, when it comes to our calling and our purpose. Now, when I talk about calling and purpose, I'm not like, one day you'll stand on the stage and preach to many people. Not that. Like, I'm talking about your everyday call and purpose. How many of us have stepped out and we're like, I'm going to help this person, I'm going to walk a journey with this person, and then they let you down, and you're like, I'm not going to do that again. Anyone ever experienced that? Or maybe you have a family member and you feel really like, I need to speak to this family member about Jesus, and you speak to them and they disown you, or they turn their back on you and they're like, I don't want anything to do with Jesus or you. And we all have these experiences of going out, and as we've gone out, something has happened, and maybe some of us have actually run away from the calling and the purpose. We stepped out with this burning in our heart. Maybe you tried to fulfill a dream or something that you're working towards, and you failed, and you're just like, okay, I'm out, I'm running, I'm done with the call, the purpose, I'm just going to live my life. And so Moses, that's what happened with Moses. He finds himself in a place of barrenness, but that's where he actually found his true purpose and his call. And so what do we do when we're in that situation? What happens when we're in that situation where we know we need to disciple, we know we need to witness, we know we need to be the light, we know we need to make a difference, but yet it feels pretty barren? What do we do? I'm going to give you 5 points that we're just going to quickly jump into. And this is what Moses did. Point number 1, reflect. Let's have a little look at what happened again with Moses. Exodus 2:11-12 says, one day after Moses had grown up, he went out to where his people were and watched them at their hard labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people, looking this way and that, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. The reality is we all want to do good, but we all have a dark side. Moses' character was raw, pretty undisciplined, pretty violent actually, and pretty destructive. But he had these natural gifts and talents. But they were really at the mercy of all this unresolved past and all the unexamined emotional patterns that had driven him. And so he steps out and does something in the goodness of his heart. He steps out, he wants to help, and all of that just takes him down the wrong road. Paul says this in Romans 11:21. He says, I find it to be a law that when I want to do what is good, evil lies close at hand. And so all of us have a shadow. All of us have a dark side. And most of us start off with this desire to do good, to help somebody, to make a difference, and then our personal insecurities, our feelings of inferiority, and our need for parental approval get in the way. Our disappointments from the past get in our way. Our fears and our doubts get in the way. We've got this desire. Okay, cool, God, I'm going to walk out of here, and this week I'm going to speak to somebody. I'm going to bring light. I'm going to share Jesus. I'm going to share hope. But then all of this stuff is happening on the inside of us. And what do? Moses fled to the desert. And for 40 years, he lived in the desert, a place of reflection, a place of solitude, a place of silence. I know my cell group, I beat it into them every single week about solitude and silence, guys. You're getting it again now. But it's a beautiful place to be, although it's a very difficult place to be. And so Moses had this raw gift of leadership. And he had the sense of doing right. But yet he steps into something, and out of that, destruction comes. And so he runs. He runs. See, our leadership cannot be a force for good if it is not being refined by the rigors of reflection and of solitude. You catch it? Our leadership, our desire to make a difference, there needs to be a place of reflection, personal reflection. And that's what Moses had in the desert. You see, if you want to go out, what do you need to do? You need to go in first and reflect. Point number 2, you need to discover yourself. So Moses remained in solitude, like I said, for 40 years. In the non-public eye, he was royalty beforehand in the public eye. Now 40 years, no one around him except some sheep, pretty much. And in Exodus 2:21-22, it says this, Moses agreed to stay with the man who gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. Zipporah gave birth to a son. And Moses named him Gershom, saying, I have become a foreigner in a foreign land. As you may know, and it's very much the same for many of our cultures in South Africa and in Africa, you sometimes would name your child after something you saw, something you experienced. And here, Moses names his son Gershom, which means I have become a foreigner in a foreign land. This was a profound revelation for Moses, I think, because I think this was when Moses finally acknowledged his identity, who he was. He had been reflecting and in this place of walking with sheep, and he's in this place of the wilderness and barrenness, but yet in the reflection, he starts to see who he truly is, a foreigner in a foreign land. This was a moment when he was able to claim his greatest pain and his greatest weakness and his greatest brokenness. He probably didn't even realize it. I've been on this little journey of trying to be more silent within myself, and little pockets during the day where I've just, whether it's a 2-minute moment of silence, a 5-minute here, a 1 minute here of just like, God, where am I at right now? What am I feeling? What are you saying? And the more I've started to do that, because it's not fun. I don't know if anyone enjoys that. Most of the time I'm just like, creak, 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 creak. Hello? Is there anyone there? But I'm trying to make it more and more of a routine. And the more I've done that, the more I've started to realize certain things about my own life. The more I've started to discover me. That's what Moses had gone through. He was beginning to discover who he was. You see, ultimately, I begin to see who I am, and I discover me. In solitude and reflection, what I've experienced, that all my illusions of who I am as a great, nice, kind person has kind of fallen away, and I've realized that I'm actually kind of jealous. I kind of have rage issues. I'm competitive. I want to please people. And I've realized my fears, my anxieties, because of reflection. I've begun to actually discover who I am. And there's some moments that I'm like, it even happened this morning. I was like, Tammy, you're a bad one, hey? Lately, God's, in the last 3 days, He's been convicting me of my driving. The way I sinned. How many times did I sin this morning coming to church? A lot. Driving over solid lines, trying to overtake people, looking at my phone in the car. Like, this is illegal here, this person. And I've started to realize all these things of who I actually am. I'm actually a sinful person. But you know what's been beautiful in that? I've been able to then surrender that to God. And so I've found this safe place with God and with myself, where I've been able to actually go, Tammy, what's actually in your heart right now? There's moments I see people doing something and I'm like, I can't believe that person did that. And then when I have a little bit of a reflection later, God's like, you did that there, A, B, C, D. And I'm like, me? And I look and I'm like, yep, exactly. And so it's been a place of me finding out who I am. You see, the soul of making a difference, of sharing Jesus, of finding your calling and purpose, begins with who you are, who you really are. Not who you think you are, not who you're portraying to others, who you really are. That's actually where your purpose and your calling begins. And God's call actually includes everything of our life. Our traumas, our difficulties, our weaknesses, our strengths, our joys, all of that is part of our calling. But the weird thing about it all is that we're so distracted in life. We're so distracted in life that we actually have struggled to step into our calling because we don't even know who we are. And so you can step out and do something great, but actually you've got like a selfish motive behind it, and therefore it doesn't work out, and you're like, but God, I did A, B, C, D, and God's like, if only you would just take a moment, I'll tell you where that place, where that goodness came from. So the more you start to reflect and be silent, the more you discover who you are. So if we're silent and we're surrendering, we begin to know who we are. And this allows us, number 3, to pay attention. Exodus 3, 1-3 says this, Now Moses was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the far side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush. And Moses saw that though the bush was on fire, it did not burn up. So Moses thought, I will go over and see this strange sight, why the bush is not burning up. So, interesting enough, do you know that bushes burn in deserts? You know that's normal, hey? Apparently it is. Apparently it's so hot, like a bush will just be like, whoosh, like just go on fire. So that was very normal for Moses to see every day. He walked in the desert every single day. He saw bushes burning all the time. But what he noticed was this bush was not burning to ashes. There was something different about this burning bush. And I want to ask us the question, do you have the space to even pay attention to the burning bushes around you? We have this desire to do good, and we're like, God, one day you're going to use me to do that, build a great business, preach to the nations, do this, all these things, write books, and and we have all these beautiful things that, but God's like, just look for the burning bush. Look for the burning bush every day. We need to start paying attention. You see, the more you reflect, the more you discover who you are, and the more you're able to start paying attention. Because when you're reflecting and discovering who I am, it creates space in my head to actually see burning bushes. Unfortunately, I think we've gotten to the place where we're so non-reflective on our lives, and we're just caught up in everything because the world is so extremely busy. We're caught up in all of these things that we can't see burning bushes around us, and we can't even go like, hold on, there's a moment right there that we need to tap into. Like this morning, hold on, there's a moment that we need to tap into. God, what are you doing right now? Sometimes we don't even see that because we're like, oh, I need to get home. Oh, the kids, all of this is happening. And we miss the moment of the burning bush. And I want to ask you that same question. In your heart, do you ever feel burning for something? Some of us are so distracted and so busy, we can't even see the bush on the outside, neither can we see what God is burning on our hearts on the inside. This lady, Elizabeth Dreyer, says this. She says, in a profound way, our intentionality, thank you. I wanted to really make it profound and then I messed it up. Our intentionality is a key ingredient. How's this? It's a key ingredient determining whether we notice God everywhere or only in church or only in our suffering. That's so true, hey? We're like, okay, I'll find the burning bush at church. And God's like, no, if you are intentional during the week, I will show you the burning bushes in your community. I'll show you the burning bushes in your family. And even more, I'll start to burn something on the inside of you that when you want to step out into something, you can, because you're finding freedom with God, because you're reflecting, you're discovering who you are. And in that discovery, it's unfolding into a place where we are able to pay attention. The maturity of a believer is having the capacity to notice the activity of God so we can join with him in that activity. The maturity of a believer is being able to notice the activity of God every single day, that we're able to join him in it. We sometimes think our calling, making a difference, all these things, I need to go do this, God's like, I'm doing something. Just wake up and ask me, God, lead me today on what you're doing. I want to follow you in it. Point number 4, hear his voice. Exodus 3 verse 4 says this, and when the Lord saw that he had gone over to take a look, God called to him from the bush, Moses, Moses, and Moses said, here I am. I love this. The Lord saw that he had gone over to take a look, and then he speaks to him. I wonder if he didn't go and take a look, what would have happened? We need to pay attention. And then it says God called him from within the bush. So many people are like, how do you hear God call you? How do you hear God's voice? If you just start paying attention to the burning bushes around you, you may just start to hear God's call and what God is saying. And then Moses says to God, here I am. Here I am. It's a prayer that I'm trying to pray more and more. Is just saying, God, right now, here I am. You're in a situation and you're like, okay, I'm going into a meeting right now. I don't know how this meeting is going down, but God, I'm here. I'm good. You're here. I'm here. Let's do this thing. It's quite a beautiful little prayer to pray. And then lastly, in all of this, God then calls Moses to go. Exodus 3, 7-10 says this, the Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I've heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I'm concerned about their suffering. What a kind God, hey? So I've come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them out of the land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites have reached me, and I've seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. I am sending you to the Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. See, when God was sure that he had Moses' undivided attention, the first thing God speaks to him about is his heart and how Moses can join in with him. So this isn't just God's gig. Kind of in the beginning, it feels like that. God's saying, this is what's happening. No, I want to set them free. And then all of a sudden, he turns to Moses and he says, okay, will you go for me? Such a beautiful thought that there's a partnership in our going. And so when we say, okay, we want to be able to share Jesus and share hope to the world, it's not you just going to do your vibe. It's really not. And the more that you reflect, actually, I've noticed, and the more you discover who you are, you actually start to realize, hold on a second, this is God leading the way, and I just step into it. I step into those moments because I'm paying attention, and I'm able to go. See, living out God's daily purpose is a place where God's presence actually intersects with humanity in a partnership to do something impactful. Beautiful, hey? God's presence intercepts with humanity, with my life, so we can do something together. In conclusion, I think if Moses was paying attention in all of this, and this is probably something we need to pay attention to, there most likely was a moment where everything kind of started making sense to him. It was becoming clear that his calling was what's that word? Inextricably. There we go. Beautiful. Inextricably. That one, yes. It was interwoven. Let's just put it that way. It was in that moment. I speak too much closer, guys. Sorry, I'm struggling with my English. English is tough today. So, so it was in that moment, Tammy, come back to me, okay? It was in that moment that he actually noticed, hold on a second, everything that I'm going through, all the reflection, all the connecting with God, finding out who I am, all of this has happened. And now God is calling me back to where I'd actually murdered someone, to where I'd fled from. I've noticed in my life, and this is just to finish off with this, I've noticed, like, if I can be frank, I'm a white woman. Some would call me Caucasian. I'm a white woman, and I'm working in a community which is mostly Xhosas. I struggle to speak the language. As much as I try, it's too difficult for me, or I'm too old, I don't know what it is. And we're brought up so differently. And my forefathers pretty much had their forefathers in this whole apartheid system vibes. And now I'm working in a community, and I'm just like, God, what do we have in common? And so God took me on a journey to realize that my pain that I've experienced in my life is very similar to their pain. It's just in different ways. And pain is pain, no matter which angle you come from. And so God has taken me to a place in my life where my difficulties and my pain and my trauma and all of these things, even all those things I mentioned in the beginning, all that stuff that has happened, it's actually, God has used it for me to be able to go and step into my calling and purpose. And so as I've reflected, as I've been able to discover me, as I've begun to pay attention and hear the voice of God, I'm able to go each and every day, knowing that something could happen any moment, but knowing that people that live in that area, something can happen any moment to them as well. What makes it different? Do I run away from a call because of fear? And can I just say this? I'm not saying my call is greater than anybody else's call in this room. Some of you are kids, and if you were to say to me, do you want to swap? I'd probably be like, no, I'm good. I'll stay where the hijackers are. No, I'm joking. I'll be like, you keep your kids. I'm going to the hijackers. But I'm not making any greater difference than anyone else here in this building, because we've all been put in a place. And God's using who we are and what we've gone through to actually make an impact and to make a difference and to step into a call and a purpose. But let's not be so busy that we just don't even see the burning bushes, or so busy that we don't even reflect on who we are and what we're going through, because God will use who you are and what you've gone through to actually step into the things that He's called you to. And so today is a challenge for each one of us. Maybe you are looking at these thoughts or these 5 points and you say, actually, I need to reflect more in my life. Or maybe I need to discover who I am more. Maybe I need to start paying attention. Maybe I need to start actually listening to God's voice. Maybe God is saying right now, go. There's something very specific I want you to do, and you need to step into that. See, God's called us. Our new series is called Share Jesus, Share Hope. But it has to start with going in before we can go out. It has to start with reflection, little moments of silence or solitude, even if it's in the toilet, wherever it may be. Find a moment of God, where am I at? What's happening in my life? Who are you? A moment of just silence sometimes, and nothing happens, and you're like, okay, cool, no problem. But in all of that, God is working out something great in your heart. He's doing something in your heart. And it's not the easiest thing, let me say, when it comes to reflection and solitude and silence. It's not the easiest thing. But in those moments, God's going to do something. In those moments, He's going to start changing your heart. So what I want us to do now, which is very different for us, I want us to have a moment of silence. A moment where God can speak to you. Maybe He doesn't even speak to you. Maybe you're thinking all these things in your head and you want to grab your phone because you've forgotten to do this and you need a WhatsApp. Just leave it and just take one moment with God. We'll do it for a minute of silence and just reflection. And so let's do that. Thanks, guys. God, we thank you that even in this moment, when we hear the wind blowing outside, we thank you that, God, that even in this moment, you'll just blow afresh on us. God, that you'll start to help us to see the burning in our hearts, what you've put there. That you'll start just to revive our hearts once again. Revive our hearts for new intimacy with you. Revive our hearts to be able to pay attention to what you're doing around us so we can come in and help in whatever way we can. Revive our hearts for new breakthroughs in our lives. As we wait on you, God, revive us this morning.